Yo, what's up guys, John Boogle here. Here we go, we got Into the Future Chapter 3 Floating Continent, the updated in-depth guide. Let's hop in. And you already know the most important part in all of these in-depth guides for these chapters is the treasures. So make sure you absolutely do get the previous treasures all superior, especially if you're using low-level units like we are here. Alright, let's hop into the lineup. As always, we're just going to use this lineup to explain some things, so don't just copy the lineup and hop into the stage, ever. Baseline for meat shields, 5 if you are really struggling. The 5th one can be something special for the beginning, like here we are bringing artists. If you have ramen, of course, this will help out tremendously, not only for the beginning, but later on in the stage as well. Rover can work in this stage okay-ish. At this point, if you don't have a decently higher level, like 30 plus or the true form, it can get shredded to the boards here, because if they start stacking up to 3 like they do in this stage, it could be quite troublesome for Rover. So just keep that in mind. It is definitely an option, but not something you should be wasting cash on in this stage if you don't need to. That applies to artists as well. Then we have our crowd control unit here, Psycho Cat. You can slot in other crowd control units, though there isn't many units that could fit this role, because the alien crowd control is mainly just Psycho Cat and Castaway, and other than that, it's like just the Ubers that have the crowd control effects. Pairing Majika with Psycho Cat does help out a lot, but the main crowd control unit here that you do want to bring if you do have it is Castaway. Absolutely. This is not like the previous floating continent stages. You are going against 3 boars that could possibly stack up to 3. AoE crowd control is king in this stage. But as you dive through those units you have, looking for those crowd control units, you'll quickly realize that it's pretty hard to come by a good replacement for Castaway in the stage. But hey, if you do not have Castaway, you can do this stage without Castaway. It will just require a little bit more help, and we'll hop into those strategies later in the video. But for now, just keep in mind, Holy Valkyrie is certainly an option here. Even though the freeze chance is pretty crap, it does work. But yeah, other than your crowd control units, you just want to bring other attackers. Ranged attackers works nice here. LD works nice here, because if there happens to be moth that appears behind the boar, you do want to somehow take it out. It's not a need, but it definitely helps out tremendously. But yeah, you could just slot in any general attacker really here. If you do have access to true forms, which at this point you should really have true forms, then you could use busted units like Cameraman, Courier in this slot. But hey, if you don't have any of the good general attackers like Drama, Paris, Pole Vaulter, etc., then you can just slot in Dragon Cat, Crazed Dragon, Crazed Legs. Crazed UFO is a pretty great option for this stage with its high DPS AoE. If you have Chill Cat or Solar Cat's true form here, absolutely you can use it in the stage. It will help shred the boars down. Paris, once again, I mentioned before, the general attacker. And of course the goats here, Cameraman, and do not use it if you do not have the true form. Cameraman is a lost cause without the true form. That's why I haven't invested any levels into it yet, because I have not started true forming any units, well, any gacha units yet at least. And of course the other goat, I don't really have to mention it here, but Courier, you could use it in the stage, obviously. And the last few units here, we are slotting in Crazed Bahamut and Ururun Wolf. Now, you do not need either of them. If you have better Ubers, replace them, because guarantee you 99% of your Ubers are gonna be better than Bahamut and Holy Valkyrie. But for guide purposes, we are using Bahamut and Wolf here. Even if it's a level 1 crowd control Uber like White Rabbit here, you can replace Holy Valkyrie or even Psycho Cat in this example. So if you have better Ubers, use them. Instead of using the legends, you do not have to use Crazed Bahamut or Wolf or Valkyrie. And that statement pretty much applies to the rest of the lineup. There is replacements for everything here. So yeah, even if it's a level 20 Uber, it is definitely gonna be better than Crazed Bahamut. most of the time. And if you're a real psycho and have multiple level 30 Ubers by this point, then absolutely do use them, because 80% of the time they will be better than Bahamut. To put it in perspective, Megidora and Sodom, which are both anti-floating units, will be better than Bahamut in this stage. Hell, even Nurse Cat at level 30 I think has more DPS than Bahamut. So just keep that in mind, research on the units you do have and make sure, because most of the time if they have similar range to Bahamut, which most Ubers do, they will probably be better. Alright, let's hop into the first lineup example and of course the overall strategy explanation. Now the beginning here can be quite rough with low level units like we have here. So keep in mind that in the beginning, you can just get completely overrun if you're not prepared. So I recommend just upgrading Wallet 3 times here and then start preparing. If you have Artists, that's why in the beginning I mentioned Artists just for this beginning portion helps out tremendously, having that easier time against these triple stack of Angel Hippos. If you don't, then what you can do here is just use Bahamut in the beginning here with the help of other attackers or whatever other Uber you're using. This is a base hit stage, so once you reach a certain amount of health on the base, that's when the boars start coming out. So you could take all the time you need to stack up as much cash as possible, and that is what I recommend doing. Now, like the other stages in the previous chapters, this is also pretty similar. So like I mentioned before, in those stages, you can start stacking your crowd control units early here. Like in this example, we're starting to stack our Psycho Cats and our Castaways. Mostly Castaway is there to help with its general attacking AoE here, because we are getting pummeled by these angel enemies. But there's really two ways to play this stage. Either you rush it, or you just wait until you even lure out the first moth, kill it, and then start stacking. Because if you stack here in the beginning, and then when you're taking on the base, before the boar comes out and moth comes out, just wipes out all of your Psycho Cats, then you're in a pretty tough spot. So just keep in mind that moth does spawn out early. Moth is not a base hit enemy. So if you want to be 100% safe, what you can do is wait for moth to come out and then start stacking your crowd control units, because most of them won't outrange the moth, and we will go over that strategy later. But for this one, of course, we are slightly rushing here. It goes without saying, when you get near the base, you absolutely want to have all of your main attackers up there or going up there, because of course there it is. When the base hit happens, boar comes out. This is when you just spam your way to victory. If you're using Castaway, you'll get those freeze procs on both the Cyberhorn and boar, and then you can just start stacking up endlessly. Valkyrie does help out here paired with Castaway to have that extra freeze chance on top of Castaways to just completely immobilize them. And as you can see here, they can't do anything. Psycho Cat isn't even really needed here, because the off chance that the freeze doesn't happen, Psycho Cat gets a slow off and then it's helpful. But yeah, you just have so much stacked up crowd control units by this point. Well, if you started stacking them up in the beginning, that boar will not be able to move. Now, when it gets rough is when they start stacking up. Now, if your crowd control units got wiped out by moth, this is when you will absolutely struggle a tremendous amount, especially if the Cyberhorn is still alive. If you're not using the help of Castaway here or other AoE crowd control units, if you're using just Psycho Cat here, then that Cyberhorn is completely blocking all of your crowd control towards boar. So what happens is boar just pushes up while the Cyberhorn acts as a meat shield for the boar. So don't just brush off the alien one horn in this stage. It is absolutely a troublesome part that if you don't deal with, it will become a huge problem. But if you take the time to just stack up enough attackers in the beginning, there is a great chance that you can just burst down the Cyberhorn and get it out of the way and not have to worry about it later on when the boar starts stacking up. Now with level 25 units, that's probably not going to happen unless you have like the help of some Ubers. Even with all the treasures like we do here, we just barely managed to kill the Cyberhorn just in time before the other boars started coming out. So yes, it just goes to show treasures is absolutely crucial, but at this point, so is your cat levels. Level 30s definitely does make a difference in this stage, and that difference can be between winning and losing, because if you're not using Castaway, you will probably need the help of some level 30 units if you don't have like some crazy crowd control Ubers or other crazy gacha units. But yeah, you can see we have so much crowd control stacked up. You just pin boar to the base and just absolutely shred it to oblivion, and the stage is done. That's pretty much it. But you must be wondering, Boogle, what if I do not have Castaway? What do I do? Well, this is where the stage really becomes a threat. Now, without the help of Castaway or other crowd control Ubers, this stage can become a real pain, but there is a way to do it. Do not stress out. But in this example here, you can see, even with Psycho Cat stacked up, Valkyrie there, and the help of other general attackers to just help try to do as much damage as possible to Cyberhorn and the boars, we are just not able to kill them in time, and we're just not able to crowd control enough, which eventually leads to boar stacking up, you running low on cash, and your slow death being inevitable. Even with all of the treasures at our disposal, having great crowd control units like Psycho Cat, and having great general attackers like Crazy UFO and Drama Cats, you could still lose in this stage. And this stage is definitely way more troublesome than Into the Future Chapter 3 Moon. There's two problems here. First is Psycho Cat isn't an AoE crowd control unit, and that is probably a must in this stage, right? The second one is, well, our unit here is simply not high enough level for this stage. And like I showed before, you could definitely do it with level 25 units with Castaway, but I will dedicate this second half of the video to examples without Castaway. So in this strategy, since we do have only Psycho Cat at our disposal and Sniper Cat power up and Wolf knockback here, we could have brought Valkyrie, but I thought Dragon would be a much better case here since we do need the DPS, so Dragon is in slot. But the case here is we're using the second strategy. We need to absolutely stack up as much Psycho Cats as possible. That means luring out the moth in the beginning first, killing it, and then beginning to stack our massive pile of Psycho Cats. But not only that, our attackers as well, such as Drama Cats, UFO, Crazed Dragon, because we absolutely need the TPS. Hitting cat limit in this stage is pretty detrimental as well, so having crazed meat shields that get up there in time is crucial for this stage, especially if you hit the cat limit, which can help out, and it could pretty much win or lose your run, because without your meat shields getting up there in time, your cats, your stack is pretty much just a fish out of water getting ready to get murdered. Now without Castaway, there's definitely much more RNG involved, so you just gotta hope for those wolf knockbacks or whatever other crowd control unit you're using here. Now Ubers, most of the time they do have 100% crowd control effects. If they do not, they have a better chance than Valkyrie. But Psycho Cat and Gang are enough to hold off the boars just a little bit longer to get our cycle back in with Bahamut and Wolf here, and we're able to recover. Now the main issue is that Cyberhorn that initially pushes with the first boar. If you don't wipe it out in time, you're pretty much gonna get pushed back all the way to your base. Goated score, by the way. And of course, here is the example of us utilizing a crowd control Uber. Even at level 1, it will be effective, if it has enough range at least, but you know what I mean. Most of the crowd control Ubers here do outrange most enemies, so it's pretty common that you would have a crowd control Uber or just any Uber that outranges and can do enough work to outshine Bahamut in the stage. But for this example, we're going to use the crowd control unit. Now, you can start stacking them up in the beginning if they do outrange Moth. In this case, Moth is outranged by Rabbit. It is kind of overkill here if you do want to stack up your crowd control Ubers, because they do have pretty long cooldowns, but if you want to, you can. that option is on the table if you absolutely want to secure your victory. So just keep that in mind. You can definitely stall long enough to just stack up all of your crowd control Ubers and stuff like Cyberpunk as well. So that is absolutely an option. But yeah, here we go. This is just the same thing as last time. Once your stack is up there, you just spam. You just spam until Cyberhorn dies. Once Cyberhorn dies, you'll have a much easier time crowd controlling the boars with Psychocat actually hitting the boars with its proc. And then of course you have the help of your crowd control Uber there in the back, safely sitting there at level 1, just doing its crazy crowd control effect. Even at level 1 here, we're able to just steamroll and crowd control lock the boars, so they cannot do anything here even without the help of Castaway. Now I didn't mention this before, but knockback can be quite a scary effect in this stage, because if there is moth behind boar, and when you knock back boar, your units move forward and they move into the moth's attack. So Psychocat is completely exposed and ready to get murdered. This is more so common in Into the Future 3 Moon, but it is definitely an issue to point out in this stage. So keep that in mind. But yeah, the example here is level 1 crowd control Ubers definitely does help. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for all of the strategies and explanations for this stage. The main thing here is Castaway is an absolute beast for this stage, a must-have really for this stage. But if you don't have it, of course I showed there is a possible way to do it, and of course you can use Valkyrie as a possible way to go through it, but there's multiple replacements, multiple units you can use in this stage, multiple lineups, so don't just stick to one lineup and copy it. Try to be flexible, research on your units you have, and try to slot in replacements if needed. And if you have better units, absolutely do use them, because the realistic option is either just stacking up Castaway with the help of other units, or just abusing any Ubers you might have. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Into the Future Chapter 3 Floating Continent. Drop a like if this guide helped you out, subscribe if you're new, join the #Boogle gang. It's been John Boogle, and we'll see you for the Into the Future Chapter 3 Moon guide soon. See ya.